So, VK on the beat, check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1557 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Learn how to plan, invest, and live smarter. Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, an award-winning podcast from Moneris. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Redley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, returning to Toronto Mic'd for his quarterly, back on schedule, it's Ed Keenan.
Hey.
How you doing, Ed?
Hey, I'm doing good. How am I sounding there?
You sound amazing.
Right before Mike flipped the big switch that turns on the Toronto Mic'd experience, he was testing my levels and he had to turn me down a little bit. And in the Star podcast studio, the Star moved its offices to the Well at Front and Spadina, and it's a beautiful new office. It's starting to feel more like a newsroom, but it's like a different kind of place. It's for the
Different
modern
vibe.
age. It's got, every desk could be a standing desk or a sitting desk, and it's all wired up for everything you would need. All the meeting rooms and boardrooms have video technology in them. It's good in a lot of ways. And they built a podcast studio there, but it's not really like a professional radio studio in terms of the soundproofing and whatnot. It has, one of the walls is glass, which a lot of hard looks out onto the newsroom. But as I've been hosting podcasts there, they had to move me around the room several times, and then they had to make a very special mic because I have a loud voice. I project naturally. I can talk to a room in a theater, and when I get on my radio voice, when I speaking into a microphone, I speak loudly, and even if I try to sort of tone it down, my voice was bouncing off the walls. And basically, there's 4 mics in the room, and they would be getting audio of my voice in all the mics. And no matter how they try to, so they had to make special provisions for my microphone.
That's funny
because of that. And so I don't know who you had on here before me, but it doesn't surprise me.
Katie Lohr,
right?
And she doesn't have the projection, the boisterous vocal qualities of an Edward Keenan.
So as it turns out, my mic is not even on, and you're just hearing me from.
Well, Ed, I'm a bit of an expert. This is episode 1557. I produce podcasts for many people down here that aren't Toronto Mic'd, and I've heard all the voices now. And a gentleman, I'll shout out, Ralph Benmergui. You ever heard of this guy yet?
Yeah, I was on his CBC show at one point when he...
Which one, Midday or Friday
it was
night? You're too young for Friday night.
No, I'm not famous enough for Friday night.
And you're my age.
I was
Friday night.
Unemployed 20-something, unemployed Gen X on his show. It was a whatever midday chat show he had. It was
Midday
current affairs kind of talk show.
With Valerie Pringle.
And so having recently been a non-graduate, but a person who had attended Ryerson Journalism School, a bunch of my friends were chase producers at the CBC when I was in my early 20s and unemployed and desperately looking for work. And so I would get all those calls saying Amazing. We need a deadbeat 24-year-old. Can you come on the show?
Ed, you're perfect.
And so I was on Ralph Benmerguy's show, and he sort of chastised me because how could I expect to be looking for a job when I left Ryerson without graduating? Which, of course, then I said to him, I was following the Ralph Benmergui career path, right? Because that's
Well,
what
he's
I
a Yuck
read
Yucks
in the
guy.
profiles is that he had left without graduating.
Yeah.
And then my interview ended very quickly after that. So
Well, Ben Murgy, who's a dear friend and a former client before he was poached by the Canadian Jewish News, that's a podcast unto itself. But he was an aspiring stand-up at Yuck Yucks when he found his way to midday and then eventually Friday night. I saw him last week, and the reason I brought him up is because I could have back-to-back recordings with, let's say, these two people, Mark Weisblot and then Ralph Ben Murgy.
Right.
Okay. The ability to project into the microphone between these two gentlemen, it's a very wide chasm. They couldn't be more different. So with you and Weisblot and myself, I'm in that category too. We're just projecting towards the mic, and we don't need any extra help on this back end. But lots of times with Ben Murgy, particularly, the way he talks, it's like you kind of have to do all these tricks to pick him up because he just doesn't project the way you and I. Maybe because he's
got a
saying
voice
things
for
so
TV,
wise,
as they say.
He's so wise. He knows that he doesn't need to project. You're going to pay attention to the content. You got
There
it.
you go.
Unlike us two bums.
Because if he says it softly,
right,
everybody out there has to lean in.
power move.
Yeah.
Power move. You're right. Ralph
You have to
Ben Murgy.
turn down the surrounding sound. You're not playing a video game at the same time. You tune into the wisdom.
You're like it's like the fireside chats. you're at the speaker when not that kind of rabbi Ralph speaks here. Okay, so I want to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into a lot of stuff. It's warm out today, right, Ed?
It's fairly warm. It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're in October now, and I'm still rocking, the sandals, and I don't wear socks with my sandals, despite what I see from the kids today. Are you noticing?
Yeah, my children, especially my 16-year-old, is a bit more fashionable than my other children, and she totally wears socks with sandals all the time. It's
I know.
She will go back to her room to get socks to put on with the sandals before she leaves the house, because she won't necessarily wear socks with her sneakers, right?
What is that? Just a rebel against your parents? Like, because my 10-year-old will put socks on with sandals. I personally
It's
think
the
that's
look.
the worst. I know, but I think it's like the whole joy of sandals is because socks are oppressive. I hate wearing socks. I delay the putting on of socks until as late in the season as possible. I try to get to November if I can. Why would I ever wear socks with sandals? But the kids today do it, and I think they do it because it irks people like me.
That's it. Yeah. Whatever was cool
All right.
when
Right.
you were a teenager is exactly
flip
what
it.
they want to, yeah.
All right, that's
Yeah.
my old man at the cloud rant there. But now I want to. Why am I bringing up the temperature? Because Ed, maybe you could write a piece on this for the Toronto Star, Canada's largest circulated newspaper. Today, Ed Keenan, is Toronto's 160th. Today is 160th consecutive day with a maximum temperature greater than 14 degrees. That is the longest run in recorded history in this city. This is the longest consecutive streak where the temperature never went below 14 degrees
So
Celsius.
I don't have my calendar in front of me, but if this is that 160, did you say?
160 today.
And so that means the streak started when?
Okay, well, so there's 30 days.
Month,
So
that means that
you do.
3 months would be 90 days.
It's like almost 5 months.
Yeah.
So almost 5 months. But, typically you'll get a day or two in September or October. Oh, I guess we just started October. But, that again, in recorded history, we've never had 160 days in a row with a maximum
we're going
temperature
back to
greater
May,
than
right?
14 degrees Celsius. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, and I don't know when the end is. I hope it doesn't end for a while now. But I'm just saying, I'm still in the sandals, shorts, and T-shirt, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, I'm not much of a shorts and sandals guy at the best of times, but interestingly, because we're talking about how warm it's been, it was
Right.
a little bit cooler this morning.
Oh, mornings are a little cooler.
In the 10 to 15 degree range. So I actually am wearing a jacket. My personal automobile is in the shop having the transmission replaced, which is more expensive than you'd like it to be and unexpected.
How expensive?
Like $3,500.
You know what? I would have taken the over if I were like, because
Right.
that is a lot of money. But
Yeah.
the way you built that up,
I just like my vehicle was not that expensive when it was brand new.
Right.
And so anyhow, I mean, I'm not trying to complain about the cost. It's like it comes up and it's
No, but that does
2016. And our strategy, we had thought about just trading it in and buying a new one a couple years ago because we knew this is the time when you start having to put money into it.
Right.
And we decided, well, just run this thing into the ground. And
I've been there.
And then, our kids will be older and all of that. And it's like, maybe at that point we'll buy out like a Mini or something, or maybe we'll just commute auto and have our bikes. And we live near a subway line right now. So it's like, So anyhow, because of that, and I should have cycled over here, but I had another appointment in a different part of Etobicoke.
I wasn't going to
a different part of Etobicoke before this, and so so I went to that interview, and then so I've been out since the morning, and I'm wearing a jacket, but I was working up a sweat by the time I was leaving my lunch joint and heading over here.
You're so right about this time of year and the difference between the morning temps and then the afternoon temps, because I do a pretty short bike ride with my 8-year-old to get her to before school care. And this is at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And she did tell me this morning she wished she had worn gloves. So that was the temps by the lake here at 8 o'clock this morning. And now I was outside. I took a picture with my neighbor's Halloween. They got a Halloween thing, and I was taking this jokey selfie. And I was thinking, I am hot. Like we go from where's my gloves to I am hot.
To like I'm wearing socks and sandals and I'm a little sweaty.
I refuse. Okay, now a couple of housekeeping items before I get to the first big question for you, Ed Keenan, and then I have, as usual, I bring these topics to the table because I'm very interested in your expert opinion on what's happening in the city. But you mentioned on this show a couple of appearances ago that you're a big fan of Traders, the show.
Yes. Yes, I am.
Do you have any interest in Traders Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a new season that's just started coming on, and we haven't started watching it yet. Like, my daughter, who watches it with me, we've been making our way through New Zealand season 2 recently, and we still have a few episodes left, but stuff got busy with school and that, so we haven't had that many weeknights free. But Traders Canada season 2 is on the agenda for what's coming up.
I bring it up because my friend and client Mary Jo Eustace is on this season.
Yeah,
and I won't spoil anything. I don't understand the show anyway. I haven't tuned in yet, but so I don't know if I could spoil.
Did she tell you some spoilers? Isn't she sworn to secrecy?
Yeah, she told me that.
Don't tell me if she wins or not.
No. I don't know that. If/when. So I don't know if this even happens. How's that? So if she's eliminated, then the next day she can come on Toronto Mic'd and talk about the experience and everything.
Right. So when the episode airs.
So if this episode airs.
And so has she given you a date then?
No.
Okay, no, that would be the spoiler.
No. I think she respects the rules of these shows. Okay. Right. So I just wondered if you were watching, I was going to just point out Mary Jo Eustace is on the show.
Well, when I do watch it, I will be excited to see it.
You can submit questions for her.
I mean, I don't know if when she comes on, it's going to be like a Traders Superfan episode, like get into the guts of it. But I am fascinated. I think I mentioned it to you before.
You can zoom in.
I'm kind of fascinated by the mechanics of that show because it has like some of the drama and intrigue of your Survivor or Big Brother or whatever. But it's really the gimmick actually really changes the whole way that they play, right?
So what I don't understand, because I haven't watched or bothered to read the rules, okay, is these are some of these people seem to be celebrities. Like it sounds like Mary Jo Eustace auditioned for this role in some regard. Yeah. So these are not normies in a game show.
I'd have to remember what happened with Traders Canada season 1, but it seems like some, because I've watched the UK version, the New Zealand version, the American version, the Canadian version, and multiple seasons of each. And so sometimes in some of these versions, all of the cast are like reality TV show pros, and they're introduced that way. Like this guy was on Fantasy Island or whatever, those Love Island, and this woman won season 26 of Survivor, and this guy has a 7-time champion from The Challenge, that MTV show. Like it's like, and they're all like, this is their show that they were on before. This is why you know them, which I basically don't know any of them because I've watched so little reality TV other than the Traders.
Right.
But then some are just random people who are on the show, and then there are some like I think New Zealand. There's a couple of different seasons of this from various countries where it's like intentionally half and half. So like half the cast are famous for their corruption and skullduggery they've done on other reality TV shows. And even the normies on the show know them for that.
Right.
And then the others are complete wild cards. Like this guy's a retired police officer and this woman is like a home care nurse. And I guess that there's always some discussion of like whether the reality TV people are going to gang up on the others or whether they're going to stab each other in the back. But often these reality TV people have like personas they're famous for, like, oh, that's the backstabber guy. And everybody else on the show knows it now.
Right.
So from the very beginning, they often have a target on their back. But so I haven't seen this Canadian new version yet. And so I don't know if it's all celebrities, Canadian celebrities.
See, I don't know
not.
either. Maybe Leslie Taylor, who's watching us live at live.torontomike.com. I know she watches this show because she was curious if you were watching it because you had talked about your love for Traitors. And I made that bad joke about the TV show Traitors with a D that was on Global. You remember this back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember now this conversation. But Leslie says you're her favorite Toronto Mike guest.
Oh, well, that's so nice to hear.
That's a long list of wonderful people, and you're number one.
There's been quite a lot of like legitimate celebrities.
Jim Van Horn?
Here.
Does that include Jim Van Horn? Actually, and Leslie's sister was on this show, Carolyn Taylor. From the
Maestro Fresh Wes has been on this show.
Does that include Mishy Me? Just let me know if that includes Paul Langlois of the Tragically Hip. Okay?
I am honored to even be on a list.
Paul Langlois or Maestro Fresh Wes?
With you, Mike.
Okay. Well, let me get to the hard-hitting questions. We'll see if you're still honored here. Okay, so you described it off the top. You described this podcast studio where they have to hang you like a bat from the rafters to make sure you don't overwhelm the microphones. By the way, these unidirectional
if anybody has
mics are
egg
good
cartons to donate to our soundproofing
no, the solution,
efforts,
listen, I did at the beginning. I had the guy who does the audio for Toronto Blue Jays games on television. He was my consultant. My unpaid consultant when I set this up 12 years ago. And he was explaining to me, I didn't know what mics were all about and different things. The only mic I know is me. I'm Toronto Mike. But he was explaining that these unidirectional mics, you got to be right on these mics. But the fact is, we don't need to worry about egg cartons and glass walls and stuff because of the unidirectional nature of these microphones. So I learned a lot from Andrew, and then trial and error, I learned a lot more. But this question is about Toronto Star podcasts because Diamond Dog wrote in and said, I have a question for Ed Keenan.
Yeah.
What happened to the This Matters podcast?
All right. So the This Matters podcast, as it used to be, is on hiatus. I'm
not fixing this in post, Ed.
No. But it may not come back in the same way. The Star has since then launched like what it calls the Star Podcast Studios. And Saba, who was another host of This Matters, has a new podcast that's been launched. Kevin Donovan, who was not a This Matters host, but who has done several successful investigations. I mean,
Sherman Murders stuff.
He's
like
among
the
most prominent investigative journalists in Canada, and he's done his podcast series is based on his investigations of the Sherman murders in particular. Yep. Have been very, very popular. And so he's done more. There is a dating podcast. There is a Millennial Money Matters, I think, podcast. And in development is a revamp of the sort of Ed Keenan podcast, which some of those may go back into the This Matters stream, and it will be kind of like an overarching brand, kind of like This Matters presents,
and you'll be Google.
Yeah, and so there'll be separate programs under that banner. Right. Although I'm not trying to be cagey about anything. I just legitimately don't know because I'm not in the meetings where this stuff's decided. That's how it's been described to me. So I am in the meetings where we have been sort of developing, and maybe given that there have been a lot of changes at the Star recently because we have a new editor-in-chief who took over in the summer and who has recently sort of like put her senior management team in place and a bunch of stuff like that happening internally. maybe our summer hiatus stretched out through September a bit more than it normally would because there were other things behind the scenes that everybody's kind of attending to. But I'm now in earnest in meetings like with my producer and the managers at the Star, sort of like fine tuning a new version of a podcast I'll be hosting there. And so there probably will be news on that's public like in the next month, I would say.
So next appearance, because we're back on schedule. So in 3 months, when you return to this program, we'll have details. Maybe I will have even heard this. But do you have a title for this podcast yet, or is that
not that? Well, not finalized,
matter.
and the draft titles are not for public discussion. So
that's exciting to me. Okay,
yeah, this doesn't
Stay
matter.
tuned. That's a great title actually. This doesn't matter. I think that would be more popular than a podcast.
Never mind.
Yeah, it's all about Nirvana. Never mind. Okay, so a couple of quick notes on FOTMs in your business. One is that FOTM, again, for the newcomers, that means friend of Toronto Mike, Ed Keenan himself is a valued FOTM. But Alan Carter's an FOTM.
Yeah.
He was let go because there was a cost-cutting wave at Global thanks to Chorus
Shocking.
issues. Have you heard about Chorus's cost-cutting measures lately?
I mean, but just... I mean, these, especially the cost-cutting ones, never sank in. But if there was anybody who, like... I mean, first of all, I like Alan Carter a lot. I like his persona. I like his... Like him as a... I like his personality as a person in like, that I've known him off camera. But I also think, like, as a sort of modern-day, like, both radio and TV guy, and, you know, he was doing so much for them. Like, he was anchoring so many things. I used to sometimes be the guest host when he went on vacation or when he went on the road of his show at 640. I was often, sometimes, like, during the civic election and whatnot, on panels on his television program. And so, yeah, I was kind of shocked to see him go. I take it he's now a reporter, correspondent with City TV.
You got it. He's the municipal affairs reporter for City News. And I feel like you two would have a lot in common. I mean, you're more of an editorialist, I suppose, but you're in that municipal affairs world.
Yeah, and so I think we do. Like, it's not like we have spent a lot of time socializing together, but
let's us three get together at Great Lakes and have
professionally cross paths quite a bit, and like, I think he's great at what he does, and like I say, he's not an opinion. Like, his business has not been to be an opinionated loudmouth like me.
Right.
But I do feel like he brings a little attitude, a little sensibility to not the sort of conventional anchor. Like, he's a bit more fun, a bit more lively. And so yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I actually like you both. He's replacing you in these quarterly episodes, Ed. That's the bad news I have for you. I just want to see your
cost-cutting measure here.
Alan will now be joining me in 3 months. But did you know he was at Chorus for almost 25 years, which is so unheard of in this day and age. But he was almost there 25 years. And he was, some big names. You mentioned he was there forget the radio, but he was on Global News all the time. But he was in that wave that got such big heavyweights as, like, Farah Nasser, for example, was caught up in the same wave. So a lot of good Chorus people got let go through no fault of their own. But it's nice to see Alan Carter joining City News Toronto as a municipal affairs reporter.
Yeah,
so there you go.
Absolutely.
One more little tidbit here, because I don't, Weisblatt doesn't visit every month anymore. So who else am I going to talk to about this? But Jeff Spindle is a name Boom 97.3 listeners might be familiar with. He was there for 14 years. There was a coast-to-coast show that he was hosting. I don't have the name of that show offhand.
Not Coast to Coast. That was on a different radio station, network.
Did you tune into those Coast-to-Coast? To see if there's aliens in your backyard?
Yeah, no, exactly. To hear about the aliens and the big conspiracies, like who's covering it up and all of that. I am familiar with it, but that's something different.
Is it Art Bell? Was that the name?
Yes.
Okay, he's
Art
no
Bell,
longer with
right.
us. I think he's gone now. But yeah, conspiracy theories at some point were fun things, like there's aliens amongst us, and then they morphed into, like, ugly things, like, this shooting was actors and stuff like that. Like, at some point, the conspiracy theories lost their soul and their charm and became very hurtful, mean things. You know what I mean? But Jeff Spindell, who's not a hurtful mean guy.
When we were coming up, Mike,
it was
back in the day,
aliens and JFK.
First of all, you would never wear socks with your sandals.
Never.
Maybe the
Well, old
conspiracy
people
guys
did. That's the
would.
thing.
Yeah.
The boomers,
The
maybe,
boomers
maybe
did.
older
Yeah,
than
yeah.
boomer, but what's that? The Greatest
They were
Generation?
famous for it. Like it was like your grandpa.
Yeah, old guys did it. We sure didn't. Maybe because
Yeah.
the old guys did it, and maybe because we don't. The kids are doing it. Like
But you
this is
wouldn't wear
exactly
the
how it
socks with
works.
your sandals. And the big conspiracy theories were who shot John F. Kennedy.
Right.
And
Area 50,
Area 51, the aliens, right? The alien abductions.
Right.
And
like X-Files stuff.
whether those same aliens were the same ones who built the pyramids or not.
Right. I miss those conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I miss them. Okay. But Jeff Spindell, just to wrap this up real quick, he was also a victim of cost cutting. This is Stingray Radio that let Jeff go. Jeff was childhood friends with FOTM Hall of Famer Cam Gordon. This is the connection. And Jeff next week will make his Toronto Mike debut, like sort of an exit interview to talk about his career in radio, what happened at Boom 97.3. So tune in for Jeff Spindell and his Toronto Mike debut next week.
That should
Ed,
be good, yeah.
now we're going to get down to business. All that was just pre-game show. Should I start recording?
All right,
this?
we have cleared our throats now, yeah.
And now your levels are perfect. Your levels are perfect. But I'm going to quote John
So
Lawrence.
now you're on to your actual agenda.
my actual agenda.
Yeah.
Right? So John Lawrence, good FOTM. You friendly with him? Would you have a beer with him?
I've known John Lawrence for years. I have sometimes played hockey with him. I was more involved than I am now, but in Spacing Magazine, sort of in its early years, he used to write for me when I was an editor at iWeekly for a while. Like, we've just known each other a long time. He's a great journalist, great
journalist, good
smart
FOTM, smart guy. I'm going to quote him. Toronto has surely become the laughing stock of the global transit community. Toronto's Eglinton Crosstown LRT will not open in 2024. This is a quote I pulled from John, but I need your take. Maybe you have an update. I got some sort of like, I think it was Doug Ford who suggested like that might not be true, but it seems to be the case. What's going on? Why can't we open this damn thing?
Oh, man.
Do I need to clear my schedule?
You've got so much like sponsor merch on the table in front of me that I can't just smash my head on it repeatedly. Like,
It's an empty
I would
box. Go nuts.
destroy a perfectly good lasagna here. But oh my God. I was out on Eglinton Avenue East near the Golden Mile yesterday doing some research for an upcoming column. And while I was out there, those Eglinton LRT trains, because they actually do run in 2-car trains, were going by every 7-8 minutes. And, I have noticed that when I've been out near Black Creek and Eglinton, there's a baseball diamond buried in behind there. And sometimes I've been coaching out there. And, I'll tell the kids, if you hit one of those trains, you get a free steak.
Right.
And they never can hit those trains. But the point is that, like, the tracks are there.
Yeah.
The trains are running. There's there's drivers there driving those trains. Like, obviously it's ready to go. Why can't you just give us a date? It's been, like, what are we on to now? 14 years or 15 years they've been building this thing, right?
That's unbelievable, Ed.
And they kept postponing. If anybody's just catching up, and I suspect that the listeners of this podcast already know this, but
It's
just
one of our favorite
to
topics.
rehash it, is like shortly after they started building it, the initial opening date of, like, it's supposed to be open before 2020 or something at that point, and they were like, okay, that's not going to happen. It's going to be 2021. And then for a while, Rob Ford was messing with it because he was trying to insist that even the Scarborough part should go underground, like the Victoria Park to Kennedy, which it's built above ground now on big wide. The Eglinton's very wide at that stage. But he was trying to bury that. And a lot of people forget when they talk about, in memory, about Rob and Doug Ford and the subways push, that the Scarborough subway extension they're building was never a Rob Ford project until all of his other projects were killed. His subways were going to be the Eglinton LRT at a cost of many billions of dollars extra was going to be buried over to Kennedy, and then the Shepherd subway extension. Those were his Scarborough subways. And anyhow, so I think that wrangling and revising kind of delayed it a bit, but then, they got on to building it, and then 2021 became 2022, and then they're like, well, a little later in 2022, and then that's about the time I moved back from Washington, D.C., just the same. I think it was my first column back on the beat in Toronto was a sort of a waiting for Godot, because Phil Verster had just announced, like, actually, it's not going to be this year. It's not going to be early next year. And we don't really know when it's going to be. Update to come. And then for 2 years now, since then, they've been kind of stringing us along saying, like, we don't know. Is it ever going to open? We don't know. And recently, there's been the kind of rumblings, again, because we can all see that it's like running full service there. It's running, and that's like training now. These people are in training and testing, right?
Right. But they've been in that stage
how
for a long time.
How much training and testing do we need? Yesterday, my car, I already mentioned,
right.
I had to drop it off at Caledonia and Lawrence, because I live in the near west end of Toronto, right? Like Bloor West Village. So not far in the depths of Etobicoke near Mississauga, but not downtown. And I had to go to the Golden Mile in Scarborough. And so I dropped my car at Caledonia and Lawrence at 8 o'clock in the morning, because this is how out-of-body shops do it. Just bring it by. We open at 8. But if you show up at 8:45, they're like, sorry, we're all full.
Right.
So I dropped it there, and then getting to Scarborough, if the Eglinton Crosstown was open, this would have been like a 30-minute trip. But instead it was an hour and a half of like going back down to Bloor and across and then up. But those cars were actually making the trips. I could have just, like, if I should have pulled a Back to the Future and, like, got out a skateboard and just dragged along behind. Like, if they could just open the door, I don't mind.
If you do that, let me film
if it's a trainee. If he just, like, sneaks open the door so I could hop on.
They built that monorail in Springfield. It was a weekend, I think they built that thing. But anyways, I digress.
But yeah, so the gist of it all is, and in the meantime, the Eglinton Crosstown is such a big project and goes across so many different neighborhoods of the city, will be served by it, and we have spent so much money on it.
Well, there's a follow-up,
it becomes this lightning rod for our rage and our inability to accomplish anything, right? Even when we're trying, even when we are doing something that appears to be a great thing for the city, we can't just get her done. And in the meantime, the Finch LRT is also in the same ridiculous limbo for years now, right? And there's a new lawsuit from the people building it against Metrolinx saying that the TTC is somehow holding it up, and it's just like...
But it's not the TTC, right? It's
Boys and
Metrolinx,
girls, just
right?
open it.
So can I ask some dumb questions, okay? Because if I'm so lost on this, I'm sure many a listener is lost on this. But this is Metrolinx, right?
Metrolinx is the provincial agency that's building it. So it was created...
Provincial with a P. So this is not the TTC.
That's right. The TTC will operate these lines once they open. And so what happens is that, like, it used to be that the TTC did a lot of its own building. And what is now Metrolinx, like, basically built and operated GO Transit, right? And basically Dalton McGuinty, when he was the premier, created this provincial transit building agency, especially for the GTA. And his agreement was basically that he was going to pay 100% of the costs of these, like David Miller's Transit City, essentially, or what became of it. The Eglinton Crosstown, the Finch LRT, at the time the Shepherd LRT as well. And the province was going to build them. Metrolinx was going to build them. And then originally it was like kind of hazy about maybe Metrolinx would also own and operate them, or because of the way that they financed the cost too. The province still wanted to own the actual tracks and stuff.
Yeah.
But now the TTC is going to take it over and run it, is the thing. And a lot of these lawsuits and wrangling is sort of that, like, that handover from Metrolinx to the TTC hasn't happened yet. But because the TTC is going to be the agency operating it, they are providing feedback to the contractors saying, we need it to run this way. Our service standard is X. We like this has to conform to TTC standards. So the TTC is trying to get in there and help supervise. And the contractors are saying, like, contractually, we're not allowed to take orders from these people. And so I don't understand all the nuances, but that's where these jurisdictional things are coming up. But I think most of us don't actually care about that stuff so much as we care about, like, just get it done.
Oh, amen. But okay, so if it's a provincial, if Metrolinx, which you mentioned, is provincial, okay, that's Ontario, which is, by the way, more than Toronto. I just learned this. This is a mind blow to me, actually. But okay, so that includes things like Sudbury and Timmins and all these wonderful places. Hamilton, Ottawa. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
North Bay, too. I got to write that down. Hold on. Whoa. Yeah. Okay. So, is that part of the problem? Like, I'm just looking to see where.
Lookout?
Well, yes, I've been there. So, this is a question I wish I wrote down who wrote it, but who is responsible for and then again, I didn't even know about this. You could speak to this. Who is responsible for the gauge screw up on the $13.5 billion Metrolinx Eglinton LRT tracks, and when is it getting fixed? Is there a gauge screw up?
I imagine that it is.
Maybe.
I don't know the details of that.
So we
I
don't
know
have
there were
details of
some
that.
problems with the way the tracks were built initially. I know there were some problems with platforms that had to be rebuilt, and among other problems. But essentially okay, so I don't think it's because it's the province necessarily, but I do think that when Metrolinx was created, both former Premier Dalton McGuinty and then Kathleen Wynne after him, and then Doug Ford after them, are real believers that Metrolinx's sort of procurement, like their building model of public-private partnerships was going to be the way to go, right? And they say, look at how government screws everything up. So what we are going to do is we are going to hire a private company, and then they're on the hook. The private company is on the hook for cost overruns, right? The private company is on the hook if anything goes wrong. They're going to use their private sector efficiency mojo to get this done faster and better than big bloated bureaucrat red tapey government could do. And it's going to be that way. It's cheaper, but also you're guaranteed to have it on time and on budget because otherwise they're not going to earn a profit, right?
Right.
So, but what actually happens here, and so they're talking about like privatizing the profit, but privatizing the risk as well. There was a lot of talk around government circles when this stuff was being handed out about like the private sector absorbing the risk. So now, first of all, in financing terms, and I don't want to get into the details, partly because I don't fully understand all the details because I'm not an expert on finance stuff. But like if you ask someone to take on financial risks for you, it's like insurance. You have to pay a premium for that.
Right.
You literally pay more than you otherwise would because somebody else is going to insure you against inflation escalation, construction cost escalation, all these other things, right? Mm-hmm. But we also like award these contracts to the lowest bidder and stuff, right? So the way these consortiums, because there's no one company who like takes on a job like this. It's a bunch of engineering and construction firms and stuff that get together and they bid on it. And what they do is they enter like a bid that is so low that even pricing in a little bit of risk, like they're not going to earn a profit. But what's going to happen is that the government's going to ask for changes, and they put in change orders, which means they get paid extra.
Right, scope creep.
And all those change orders of like, well, you had to go above and beyond what this initial contract asked for, right? It's like, more toppings on your pizza. It's like, how come my $9.99 for 2 large pizzas is actually $44? And it's like, well, that didn't include mushrooms and pepperoni and double cheese, right? And my understanding is that a few things happened. The pandemic happened, and they kept going with construction through that, but that drove up construction costs quite a bit because of all the PPE and the precautions and all of that, and and then like the cost of building anything skyrocketed in those years. So that, and this is a existential threat to a lot of condo developers in the city right now, and is just because the shortage of labor and shortage of certain materials that may have been originally caused by the pandemic or things related to the pandemic, but has just gone up, is that like all the cost of building everything is doubled, right? And in the meantime, so they're putting, and in the meantime, the TTC and whatnot have asked for specific materials, specific things. And my understanding, admittedly, secondhand from, but I've heard it from more than one person related close to these projects, let's say, the change orders are all being denied. That Metrolinx is taking the approach that they don't mind if it goes over schedule, but they don't want it to go over budget. And so some of these companies that have been building it may be facing taking a huge financial loss on it, and many of us will say, well, this was the whole model that you accepted the risk.
Right.
But in the meantime, also, if this is like a extinction level event for these giant contractors, they're not incentivized to just get her done. They're trying to hold on to get paid, right? Like they want to get their money back out of it, and so all of that has added up to this dragging on and on and on. And so what we hear officially, and may well be in some sense the straightforward story, is that like they're still trying to do this testing to make sure that it conforms to all these safety standards and all of that. But I suspect that the length of time it took for us to get to this testing stage, which probably we should have been doing in 2018 or something, is because some of this got dragged out both by shortages of materials and all of that, but also like if we were willing to pay a lot more money, they could get it done a lot faster. Like that's always the mantra in construction projects is what is it? Is it like fast? Well, now I'm messing it up because it's like quick, simple, and good. You can choose two, but simple's not the other one. So I'm trying to remember. It's like, but yeah, you could either have it. Oh, it's cheap, fast, good. You can only choose two, right?
Right.
And so we've gone with cheap, and I hope good,
right? And
so we're not getting it fast, right?
We sure aren't, Ed. We're sure not getting it fast. Does Kevin Donovan know that this would be a great mini-series at the Toronto Star Podcasting
With the
Unit?
Eglinton LRT?
The Metrolinx Eglinton LR, what happened? Like I would tune into that podcast.
Paying attention to that, what the hell happened. But especially, this is important because, okay, Metrolinx is also building the Finch LRT.
Right.
Which is also, to all appearances, pretty much done, and also not yet ready to open and not even have an opening date. But also they're building the Ontario line subway line, right? As well as they will be building, and they are right now building the Eglinton West LRT extension. They're working on phase 2 of the Eglinton Crosstown when phase 1 is still not open.
Unopened.
And so there's like $30 billion worth of transit projects that Metrolinx has underway that when you look at them as like some future where they're all completed, they're going to make a huge difference to the city. And yet you look at the Eglinton Crosstown and say, when are they ever going to be completed? Is there any hope? Are we going to have the same? Is the Ontario line going to be like the Electric Boogaloo version of this, or what?
Keep your good eye on this story, Mr. Keenan, because something smells here. I mean, we're going to get to more stories where things smell, but I feel like we need to maybe take a more like a lighter break here because Metrolinx Eglinton LRT Cluster F, that's going to be the name of your podcast series, by the way. The Cluster F.
The Duster Cluck.
Yes. My goodness, my brain hurts right now. But I do think a lighter fare, even though it's important to many people, is your thoughts on the new nickname of the Toronto PWHL. Do I have the right letters?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Toronto Scepters.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the nickname and the logo and all that comes with this?
It's growing on me, I think. I suspect in a couple of years I'm not even going to think twice about it.
Like the Raptors.
I didn't love it at first, although I do really like the logo. Like I think it kind of like the Raptors. Right. If the hockey team, the men's hockey team, the men's NHL as it's called, just announced out of the blue today, if it had always been called the Toronto Blue Shirts like it originally was, or the Toronto Arenas, because they didn't actually have a nickname, they just those guys in the blue shirts who play in the arena. That's who we're talking about. The
arenas and then the St. Patrick's.
Yeah. If they just announced Maple Leafs today, I would be so underwhelmed, right? Like okay, right. Yes, it's on the Canadian flag, but really, like,
it was a regiment, though, right? It wasn't the actual, like, it was a regiment called the Maple Leafs. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But the Red Stockings, like
the Knickerbockers.
No, yeah. So like, I don't love Scepters, but I don't hate it. I know there was a big backlash among some people who were like,
well, you want me to tell you a story?
Name stinks.
Well, okay. So the day they announced it, I had not one but two students, and I won't out them, but two students at TMU who asked me. I guess they Googled it. I don't know if they Googled it or they searched Twitter, but they found me because I had commented on it all, and they wanted to interview me for a class assignment on the name, and the premise was that this was somehow an homage to colonialism. Because of Queen's use scepter, like there was a connection.
Yeah.
That why are we celebrating colonialism in this manner? Which it actually hadn't occurred to me, but sometimes I miss obvious things. But
yeah, I mean, and I guess this is the way of students now, because I heard a lot of that kind of commentary. But if we're talking about why Toronto has a Queen Street in it and a King Street, and Queen's Quay and Queen's Park,
Prince's Gates.
And the Prince's Gates and the Prince Edward Viaduct.
I like this game.
Colonialism certainly ties into it, but it's because we're talking about the King and Queen of Canada.
Wait till they see our money, right?
The King and Queen of Canada, right? So this is not an homage to our past colonial leaders. This is talking about the current head of state of Canada, is a king,
right?
And he succeeded his mother, who was our queen for generations, and so. If we choose a regal name that recognizes our head of state, you may say we should shrug off the monarchy, but we're not hearkening back in a tribute to the British Empire. We're making reference to our current constitutional order. And so, I mean, I don't want to say that if we had called it like, and thank God they didn't, but if they had called it like the Toronto Parliaments or the Toronto Senators, it seems to me that would be equally a gesture to colonialism, because the Canadian government is a inheritor of the legacy of colonialism, like the actual Canadian government exists because of the colonization of Canada.
What about the Toronto Sankofas? Did anybody consider that?
I don't know. Because it's a privately held company, we're not privy to the discussions that were taking place behind closed doors. But
did you have a preferred nickname? Like, we've spoken in the past about you have seasons tickets. Wait, are they still playing? Have they moved to the Coca-Cola Coliseum?
They have moved to the Coca-Cola Coliseum. And the season, as I understand it, the training camp's going to be in November. The season will start in December. It's a somewhat longer season this year than it was last year, I think. It's moved to 24 games or something like that. I have season tickets again. I'm very excited. There are some trade-offs. I wrote about this. Moving from the good thing for those of us who are like day one season ticket holders or whatever. The good thing about the Maple Leaf Gardens facility, the Mattamy Center, which is TMU's hockey rink where they played season one,
right,
is that it's so small that you feel like you know the other people in the building, right? It's like you feel like you're at George Bell, except like the level of hockey being played is high. And these are like, you got heroes down there. And yet they can kind of, they have to, after they come up in their sweats and they stand there and shake hands. It's like the visiting players are there talking to their family right in it. But also when you shout, skate, 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 the players can hear you. You're going to hear each other. And there was a real community feel to that. And so the Coliseum is probably like 4 times the size in terms of the amount of seating. So you lose some of that intimacy. And yet it also means that 4 times as many people are going to be able to get tickets. And I think that's a massive win. And it's still a good place. The snacks are a bit more expensive at the snack bar. So I'm going to have to put myself on a diet and my kids, my family on a diet, snack bar diet. Because this is the thing. I've never been a high roller who could afford season tickets to anything.
Right.
And so always I have been like somebody's uncle calls and is like, do you want tickets to the Blue Jays game? We've got these tickets that we can't use. And I'll take my kids. And I'm like, okay, now I get to be the big shot. Because we go to 2 things a year or 3 things a year. Let's go to the snack bar 3 times, right? First, we're going to get the licorice. Then we're going to get a bag of peanuts. And then we'll go back for the hot dogs. And then we're going to go back and get something else. And I've always just figured, like, they soak me dry, but I only come here twice a year.
Right.
And so we'll make a big event of it. And then you realize when you have season tickets, like, oh, I'm here twice a week. I can't be blowing $100 at the snack bar.
That's funny.
Like, so, and especially not at the Coliseum prices, which are like more in line with Scotiabank Arena's prices. Whereas that Mattamy Maple Leaf Gardens is like university student budget friendly.
I was going to say, you can just go to the Loblaws downstairs and get some food there. So
yeah, so but no, it's very exciting. But to answer the very initial question,
Scepters.
I had no particular favorite name that occurred to me. I don't know that I'm particularly good at coming up with these names.
I have this feeling like we could have done better. I don't even know where that's coming from because I think your fan base will have difficulty even spelling this nickname. Okay, it's not easy. Not as easy as you think.
It has
the Scepters. It's got a couple, but there's an RES at the end. I think a lot of people will do ERS. There's a lot of places to mess this up.
That's the American way. Yeah.
So a lot of places to mess it up, and I don't know. Like I just feel like we could have done better. But I'm not here to
I think it suggests a lot of good props for the fans in attendance,
like the staffs or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I root for the home teams here. So let me take a moment here because I have another sports question I want to ask you about. But I first want to let you know, and I think this is why you're back every quarter. I have a frozen lasagna for you
there
from
we
Palma
go.
Pasta.
Yeah,
that's why you're here, right?
Woo! I love the Palma Pasta lasagnas. You know who loves them even more than me?
My
kids. Children. Okay. Yes, they
kids love the lasagna.
They really look forward to it. Yeah,
I think my 8-year-old only eats like 5 foods, and one of them is Palma Pasta. So lasagna and penne with rosé sauce. So shout out to Palma Pasta. They're going to host us. Ed, this is important. Take a note. November 30th at noon. That's a Saturday, I believe. We'll be at Palma's Kitchen for TMLX 17. And everyone who can hear my voice right now is invited. So that is TMLX 17. Great Lakes Brew Pub, which is Jarvis and Queens Quay. They got a great restaurant there. They're going to host 40 of us, and I've already selected the 4. So if you want in, I have to bump somebody, but I would totally bump somebody for you, okay? This is actually where you and I... This is where you and I, speaking of chorus in 640, we had that big collective. I think Alan Carter was there that night.
The Great Lakes Brew Pub,
right
down on
Jarvis
Queens
and Queens
Quay. There,
Lower Jarvis and Queens Quay. So we're gonna meet there on October 21st at 6 p.m. and that's TMLX 16. But again, that one I'm capped at 40 attendees.
So you're having a FOTM party there.
Yeah,
and it's going to be an episode 2.
No, I'm recording. So it's very complicated, I know. November 30th at Palma's Kitchen, I'm recording live. But October 21st at the GLB Brew Pub at Jarvis and Queens Quay, I'm not recording.
Oh, it's
we're
an
just
off-the-record party.
Eat and drink, and I'll tell you all the real talk. All the things guessed, because this is what happens, Ed. We record. I stop recording. Then we go outside to take a picture, and suddenly I'm hit with the real talk. Boom, bam. It's like, oh my God, this is the real deal. This person didn't quit. They were fired. This is what happened there. And I'm like, oh my God, it's all coming out now. But it's all this off the record post-recording chatter. That's what you get at TMLX 16 at the GLB Brew Pub on the 21st.
There you go.
Quickly, I know that when I was at your 50th birthday party, you had the speaker from Moneris that you used to listen to Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast hosted by FOTM Al Grego. Well, I don't know how many kids you have anymore. 3, I think. Is it 3?
3. I have 3, yeah.
So they don't all have a Moneris speaker, do they?
They do not yet.
Well, you get another one now. Okay.
Yeah.
Because season 7 is like coming soon, and we're going to be talking about season 7 of Yes, We Are Open. But that fantastic podcast has a 7th season, and that speaker is how you're going to listen to it, Ed Keenan.
All right. There you go.
Ridley Funeral Home has a measuring tape for you. You got like a bowl at home
full of these measuring tapes.
Shout out to Life's Undertaking, which is a great podcast hosted by Brad Jones at Ridley Funeral Home. Speaking of great podcasts, the Advantaged Investor podcast from Raymond James Canada has amazing investing advice and best practices. It's hosted by Chris Cooksey, who will be at the GLB Brew Pub on October 21st. Can't wait to see Cooksey there. But this podcast is highly recommended if you're interested at all in your financial investments, RESPs, GICs, RRSPs. I feel like I'm Aretha Franklin here. RRSPs. Okay. But tune in to that. Okay, so let's get back to the subject of the matter. I just want one more thing on sports. Rogers is going to own MLSE.
Yep.
I think that
100%.
women's hockey team is going to be the biggest franchise in the city, not owned by, unless the WNBA team takes off, which doesn't exist quite yet, but it's coming. But those will be the only teams in the market that are not, well, them and the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, which we love on this show, and they're at Christie Pitts, no ticket required. And that'll be next summer. We'll be talking more about them. But everything's going to be owned by Rogers.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts
all
on
the
that?
men's professional sports teams are going to be 100%, well, not 100%.
Well, not the Rock.
But majority owned.
Right.
By Rogers, right?
75%.
Tannenbaum still owns a piece of it, and he brought the pension fund back in, right? Yeah,
20, I think.
Anyway. But yeah, a controlling interest in all of the men's professional sports teams, the traditional Big Four, right? And soccer.
Well, I'd say the Big Five.
Yeah. All owned by Rogers, and the buildings they play in also either owned or controlled on long-term leases with the city by Rogers.
Right.
The broadcast networks that bring them to us, that have the rights, at least for the NHL contract.
Oh, yeah, that one's tricky because
Major League Baseball
half the Raptor games will still be on TSN. But yeah.
And a bunch of hockey games are still going to be on
the regional
TSN
ones,
too, but that's through a sharing agreement with Rogers, who has the contract, right? And I don't know about MLS. Yeah, I don't know about CFL either. Who has the CFL rights right now?
Still TSN.
Yeah, okay. So, but still, I mean, Edward Rogers is controlling quite a lot. And and that may or may not be a bad thing. I mean, I think on the one hand, I think it's good that we have somebody to complain about. Like, you want a personification of the guy in charge so that you know who to complain about, who to direct your rage at when they're losing, who you want, to throw the bums out and whatnot. There's like a level of personal accountability. And you figure like all the persona of like George Steinbrenner, like Harold Ballard's years in charge of the Toronto Maple Leafs are famously absolute shit show from beginning to end, including he went to jail. Right. People who worked for him should have gone to jail and later were found to be criminal. But even on the ice, just a terrible owner from beginning to end. And yet we knew who was responsible for that, right? Like the years that the Leafs were owned by a pension fund and then by this conglomerate of telecommunications companies where after big decisions were made or not made, you'd get some behind the scenes reporting of like, well, maybe at the boardroom table, the two representatives of the Blue Telecom and the one representative of Tenenbaum's faction, and then the other, like, you kind of get these whispers about how the sausage got made behind the scenes, but it is not the sense of like somebody standing up there and saying like, this is my team and we went with this guy as the general manager because he's smart, right? Or like whatever. I don't know how that's worked for the Blue Jays recently. But, there's that. And also, I mean, yeah, so I don't know. I don't have too much more to say about it than that. I can't say I'm like a huge fan of Rogers the company, but I think any company in Canada that's big enough to own Toronto sports teams, I'd likely not be that big of a fan of.
Okay.
Like, I don't love what the alternatives were, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know either. This is the opt-in, like Toy Factory or whatever, because you don't have to follow pro sports. Like, you don't actually have to go to these games and give a shit about pro sports. I didn't even know that. I just learned that. Okay, so, but because I personally, just to tie it back to a team Rogers owned outright before this MLSE deal, I personally tapped out of the Blue Jays. I tuned in to see if I might witness the second no-hitter in Toronto Blue Jays history because a pitcher brought it into the ninth, and I was tuned into that.
Came close twice.
Yeah. I had the official scorer of both those games in the basement to chat. Roger Lajoie was the official scorer for those two games, so he almost witnessed a couple there of scoring that game. Which, by the way, imagine nerve-wracking. What a moment if there's 2 outs in the ninth and a pitcher has a no-no, and then there's a close. Like there's a is that an error? Is that a hit?
Somebody drops a fly ball, but they're diving to make the catch, and it's like, do you score an error?
I have secondhand anxiety about that decision that I will never have to make. You know what I mean? I'm like nervous for the possibility of someone having to make that decision. So just to wrap the Blue Jays thing up, and then I want to get to another Rogers enterprise taking place at Downsview. I tapped out because this team, which I didn't have high hopes for, managed to underwhelm me and underdeliver. But what gets me is this rhetoric from the Cleveland Two, as I now will refer to them as, this Shapiro and Atkins, who their ability, they'll say that the buck stops here, but they're not actually willing to say like that. Maybe we'll change anything. Like, I have zero hope for next season. This whole idea that we stick to what core? There's one guy. Like, I heard this quote from Shapiro yesterday. We're committed to our core, and I was thinking, who do I want them to be committed to? Anyone beyond Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on this team? Like, I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe a couple of the arms. Well, Bo, I'm not even.
He's got to come back from injury.
But I don't. I'm not trying to throw out Bo because of one bad season. But I'm not as bullish on Bo as I am, of course, on Vladdy, who I think we should lock up long term. But there's a whack of reasons why I just feel like I don't even feel like doing a 2025 Blue Jay preview show like I've done historically. Like, I just don't care right now or feel like it. And I just want to say shout out to FOTM Scott MacArthur, Scotty Mac we call him, who was co-hosting a pretty good Blue Jays podcast with FOTM Richard Griffin. It was called Exit Philosophy. And Scotty announced he's leaving the show for a variety of reasons. He's busy, but one of the reasons is he doesn't want to pay close attention to this team he doesn't even like right now. So me and Scotty Mac, let us know when Shapiro and Atkins are out, and then we'll come back in. But I don't know what your thoughts are on our Toronto Blue Jays.
Man, we talked about this after the end of the last season, and like my thoughts almost haven't changed because this season was so overwhelming. But it was like 2 years ago, the team disappointed in the one-game playoff and everything, right? But the season was so fun. Right? This is like the team that was never out of it because they might just put up 12 runs in one inning at any given point, right? Like so many young guys, so much like with the jacket and the dancing around and all of that, the Barrio in the clubhouse.
Teoscar Hernandez,
it was just
L'Oreal
such
Jr.
a fun team to watch. And then last season, they kind of sucked all the fun about it. And they still, kind of made it into the one-game playoff, and it was a disappointing finish. But it almost
was a best of three, by the way.
Oh, was it best of three? You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
But it was like, and they just got smoked in 2 straight, and there was
and
like
this
that
is when
controversial
they pulled,
pitching change.
Yes.
But it almost felt like the expected end of an underwhelming season, where like somehow they didn't get better, but they got a lot less fun to watch. Like
Run
and
prevention,
then this
I believe,
year,
is what we call it.
it was the same absence of fun accompanied by total shititude on the field, except Vladdy had a great second half.
Yes,
right?
he did. Yeah, when it didn't matter.
But I do feel like, in some ways, I'm on the opposite fence with the Leafs, and this is weird because so many Leafs fans are saying, like, how did you not get rid of Mitch Marner? And we need to get Tavares out of here. And it was like, at a certain point, this core four isn't getting it done. And I feel like we've lost a whole bunch of coin flips in the playoffs. And so, yes, okay, we didn't do enough in those series to win. But in most of those series, it's like we were one shot away.
Right.
And I don't think it's actually just guts. Like, I think bad luck has a lot to do with it. And I also feel like getting through those things, you do learn some things. And it's like, I'm not ready to give up the best Leafs team, the most talented Leafs team. Sorry, I think the greatest would be the 92, 93 glory years of my youth, our
Right. I
youth.
think Wendell Clark's back here.
But the most talented Leafs team, the highest scoring Leafs team, the
most skilled team. You can call it. This is the most skilled
team of all time.
But
certainly the most entertaining to watch in decades. I'm not ready to walk away from that quite yet because I don't think they're that far from being way further. But on the other hand, I feel like with the Shatkins group here, that when they say we're going to be accountable, but there's no salary cap. I mean, there's a luxury tax, but there's like their hands aren't tied, the Blue Jays, the same way that hockey does tie the hands of a lot of teams. It's like there's a lot they could do in the offseason, and some of that might involve changing the management or changing something else, but it also is like they could turn over the roster if they want to. They can go out and swing big on the free agent market, which I know they tried to swing the biggest swing they could last year, but when potentially the greatest player in the history of the sport didn't choose us, they didn't seem to have a plan B. The plan B was like, well, I guess we'll play some of the kids from the farm. Like I don't understand why it's either the $500 million superstar or nobody at all, right? There have to be some good players we could line up and, make some things happen.
It was a weak crop of free agents.
I haven't completely checked out like you for written off next year, but it's like I would like to see some reasons for hope emerge over the offseason. Because I have to say, maybe I did check out this season. I was kind of keeping one eye on it, but I was not wrapped up in the Blue Jays at any point in this season.
Your colleague at the Toronto Star, Rosie DiManno, made some noise during the press conference yesterday. And in my opinion, and Rosie, again, I never met her.
Yeah.
We had email exchange where I invited her on Toronto Mike years ago, and she told me she's strictly a print gal, is how she put it. And
she doesn't do radio.
She said, I'm not going to do your podcast, which is fine. I've been denied by others. It's fine. I'll get over it, Rosie. But I did appreciate that somebody was kind of calling out this management on the fact that 2024 was a very bad year. And not only was it a poor year on the field, but it sounds like it might not be the happiest clubhouse. And the prospects are as low, if not lower, than they were when the Shapiro and Atkins duo took over from Alex Anthopoulos back in 2015. And that was one of the few knocks against Alex was he didn't have a rich farm system because he had kind of gone for broke with Paul Beast in there.
Traded it all away.
Which, by the way, thank you. One of the most exciting Blue Jays times I can remember was that hype train of 2015 and then the Joey Bats bat flip. So that's only
bat
possible.
flips fly forever. That's what they say.
I keep having to remind myself, we didn't actually make the World Series that year because it's like, oh no, but touch 'em all Joe. That was 93, a few years ago. But I just wondered what you thought of Rosie's question. And I noticed there was some back talk from Shapiro, like, I expect nothing less from you, Rosie. And he goes, oh, you're so charming. There was an exchange that was kind of interesting and almost personal between Shapiro and DiManno because she quoted an unnamed player in the clubhouse as saying it was a fucking shitstorm, I think was the quote. I'm trying to remember, something like that. But some people criticized her for, asking the question, but I was personally glad to hear somebody not just toeing the line and letting this go. Like, if you give a shit about sports, you can't at all let them off the hook for 2024.
And like, I don't know what those people want, right? I mean, they can disagree with her, but you want, especially like columnists, asking questions and saying things that they believe, right? And when they believe management has completely fucked things up, you expect them
Working
to
blue
say
today,
that.
Mr. Keenan. Love it.
You expect them to say that when they're talking to the management, right?
Right.
Like, what if she asked a nice question like, what would you say is the best thing you did this year? And then tore him a new one in print.
Right.
You'd say, what a hypocrite, right?
Yeah.
She's not willing to say it to his face. Instead, she asks a question that indicates how she already thinks about this, and he has a chance to respond. And maybe that changes her mind, or maybe it gives her something to put in the column when she says, this guy is the reason we stink. But here's his response to that. I think, especially if you're a manager, I understand the players are players, right? And they're well compensated, but yeah, they get thin skin. They got their psychology that they carry on to the field. They can get these weird grudges. But really, if you're the boss, you got to have a thicker skin than that, right? You got to be willing to banter a bit. But you also have to be prepared to answer that question, because guess what? Mm-hmm. Some loudmouth columnist is saying it to you in a press conference, but 1 million of your most dedicated, most loyal fans on bar stools all across the city are shouting the same things at their TV at you every time your face appears on it. And what do you have to say to them, right? I expect nothing less from you, Rosie. Is that what you have to say to them?
Right.
Or like, we're working on it. I don't know. Like, I don't know what his right response was, but you know what? Rosie's a colleague of mine. I know her well. We used to sit next to each other, although she's very seldom in the office. To her credit, she's out working all the time. She files a lot of stuff. She's been doing this a long time. But you are never in the dark about where she stands on you. You never have to guess what she's thinking. She says what she means. She's honest, and she's been covering the Blue Jays since she was a teenager.
Right.
And so she's seen, like, general managers come and go. And so, maybe they should take some notes. They don't have to agree with her, but she's not coming out of left field like, well, maybe a seat behind left field. I'm not sure where she sits when she's
Another guy, by the way, who hates socks as much as I do is Paul Beeston.
Is that right?
Yeah, won't wear socks, Paul Beeston. So we have something in common here. All right, before I leave the big red machine, and I'm not talking about Pete Rose, the late great Pete Rose. There's a conversation for a day to discuss Pete Rose, but the late great Pete Rose,
Charlie
and the big red machine. I'm talking about Rogers, okay? The other red machine, the phone booth. But quick thought. Any thoughts on the fact that we're getting Rogers is building a 50,000 seat stadium in Downsview, and Oasis is already booked for it. And before you respond, I'll just put out that it seems pretty obvious. This seems to be what's missing in the bid for an NFL franchise. So I would guess that's the longer play, is to get an NFL team, Rogers-owned NFL. I know Rogers can't own it. Maybe it'll be Ed Rogers owned. Not Ed Keenan owned. That's a different team. Ed Rogers owned NFL franchise playing out of this new Downsview
Could be
stadium.
Tannenbaum. He's potentially going to be in the market for an NFL team after he no longer...
Well, he doesn't have the
speculation is that he's going to sell his interest in... But yeah, so this is like a temporary stadium.
Well, it's
we are
prefab
told.
or something.
Yeah, and it's meant to be there for maybe 10 years or 15 years, because there's a long-term plan to build housing on that site.
Okay.
But like the way these development plans, especially for like a former like airport, the environmental remediation and soil changes and like ground development and all this stuff, and then you got to get the financing together and you pre-sell it. Like this is a decades-long redevelopment plan for Downsview Park, right? For parts of Downsview Park.
Okay.
And that place where they're planning to build this isn't going to have anything on it for like 20 or 30 years anyway. And so they're building a stadium that can go up. It's not exactly like temporary in the way that setting up some card tables in the
Like
church
Edge
basement
Fest.
is temporary, but it is
Right.
temporary in the sense that it's meant to be there for a decade or two and then come down to be replaced by the permanent installation. Like, I guess that's all right. I don't know. I'm just trying to think, like, if a 50,000 seat stadium is what we were missing. In terms of like,
Wait, am I
we're
out
losing
to lunch?
so many smaller venues or mid-sized venues? It seems to me it's like
well, you can get 45 if you're not playing. I don't know if they still use. I guess they still use the dome for concerts, right? I don't know if the new configuration for baseball or whatever, but you can get 45,000 people in there if it's not baseball game. If it's a concert, like you're close.
Yeah, so
it's not. So I just assumed in my head, and I didn't dig into it because I figured Ed Keenan's coming over. I can ask him; he knows everything. But I was thinking this must be part of like some.
I mean, if it's a long-term
game
play
thing.
on an NFL thing, although it may be the perfect venue to hold like neutral site NFL games, like. If the Buffalo Bills wanted to come up here for a home game or two,
because now that the dome is baseball only, really, like the way it's all configured,
exactly,
they can't really put a football game in there. Okay, well, it's all interesting.
And Oasis is coming back, so but that presupposes that they're both gonna like survive long enough on the tour to actually make it to Toronto next year.
Right. What's that insurance policy like? That the Gallagher brothers don't kill each other before they show up at Downsview there. I will say I've seen a number of concerts at Downsview because they, after Molson Park and Barrie closed, there was a number of Edge Fests I went to at Downsview.
And then it has been used for like SARS stock, obviously, and the Pope was there. Like it has been set up as a makeshift, but I mean, you could get 600,000 people in there for that kind of concert,
right?
But it's just general admission,
right?
You could also let them camp out there and stuff, right?
Right.
So maybe it should be our festival grounds. Like, anyhow, that's not what's been.
But it's just yet another Rogers enterprise for us to keep our eye on it. Okay, I would like to, I'm just deciding where I want to go next, but I did read today, Francesca, I think, reported to me and had some nice photos to back it up, that they've cut down Ontario Place trees. This was overnight, while it was dark, by the way, because, I actually took a kayak trip under cover of night, exactly, and under the cover of darkness. And I'm just wondering if you have any updates from the Toronto Star on the Ontario Place situation.
Off the press.
Oh my God!
From my
sitting down.
Colleague David Ryder, published probably
love that guy
at 1 p.m. today, so just before we started recording. Okay. The details of the contract with Therme have finally been publicly released. And so, it is, as we kind of knew already, a 95-year deal. It's a 70 years with a 20-year renewal possibility built into it. And the province is contractually obliged to provide 1,800 parking spaces. They are, in fact, planning to provide 2,500, but they are required. And now there's nothing in the contract with Therme that guarantees those will be underground or that guarantees they'll be right on the Ontario Place site. They just have to be there. So we know already that Doug Ford's been talking about putting it on Exhibition Place. He's trying to negotiate with the city because, of course, the cost of building an underground parking garage there was going to be outrageous. But we now do know that, as suspected, there was like a contractual obligation to provide parking for the visitors to the Therme Spa. We know, so, and this was the big thing that left in the dark. This contract anticipates, it puts Therme on the hook for $700 million in construction costs. About $500 million of that is to build their own facility. An additional $200 million or so is to provide the 16 acres of publicly accessible parkland around there, the new beaches that they've spent a lot of time talking about and all of that. And then it anticipates, I think it says at least, or something on the order of $2 billion in revenue over the course of the contract. And so if we look at that as meaning over 95 years, that basically the rent they're going to be paying to the province amounts to $2 billion over 95 years. We're talking something just under $20 million a year, I think. And so I haven't actually looked around to see if that is a good rental price for that kind of lakefront property, for that size. And then just incidentally, like, there are provisions that would allow the province to cancel this contract early after 10 years by giving 5 years notice, but it may require some payment of penalties or something. Also, if the company was to go bankrupt, the province can kind of take it back. And also David Ryder reports that the contract specifically says that Therme may not use this space for a casino, a shopping mall, or condominiums, right? It specifically does allow for the water park and spa, but under no circumstances are they allowed to build anything there that would be a casino, a shopping mall, or condominium.
Well, there goes one of the conspiracy theories floating around.
And so I suspect that was written right into the contract specifically because of the public fear that Doug Ford was really trying to get a casino in there and sideways it in somehow.
Sure.
But, if this publicly released contract for 95 years, that would be specifically excluded unless somebody overhauls it and rewrites it or amends it or something, right? But so anyhow, I think one of the things that has really bothered me about this deal from the beginning, I mean, as we've discussed, I think at length before, like one of the things that has really bothered me and a lot of people is like, I don't think this is a great use of that land. And I think we're not going to get that kind of land back. Like once you privatize a space like that, it just becomes, there's no way you can justify buying it back, right? It's like we're not buying up new parkland on the lake, right? It's an endangered species. And so I would want to think carefully about what we put there. And I think there are probably better uses that I could imagine. But another thing that has really bothered me about this all the way along has been the secrecy under which the whole negotiation or the decision was made. And I wrote at some point that, like, if they're not going to show us the details of this contract, we can't even evaluate if it's a good deal. Like, you could think this is the wrong use of the land, but still also think, okay, but if you're going to use it for this, at least we negotiated a good deal, right? And I haven't done the thinking. This is such new information that I haven't done any kind of analysis to, in my own mind, see like what would I think is a fair price? Like what terms would I be looking at? But at least now we have something to look at and know what we've agreed to, right? Know what the people of Ontario are on the hook for. We're giving them our land for 95 years. What do we get in return? And the earlier answer was, well, don't worry about that. What we get is a cool water park on the lake that we can go to and pay admission to get into. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, but that's not really something we get, right? Like that's what are they paying us, right? Well, looks like something like $2 billion over 95 years.
Adjusted for inflation, right?
I think it would probably be in constant dollars. Like I
can't imagine what a loaf of bread will cost in 50 years.
That's right. Can you imagine if
it's $110 for that whole wheat bread?
If the deal was signed 100 years ago in World War I, and it's like $1 a year,
right?
Yeah,
right. My goodness. Okay, so keep your eyes on that. But here's another ongoing, recurring topic on when you drop by every quarter. And again, Ed Keenan, if I haven't said it already, I'm going to do a reset like this is real radio, okay? You write at the Toronto Star, and people should subscribe to the Toronto Star. So articles like this David Ryder article that dropped at 1 p.m. So we're talking now it's 3:26 p.m. So like 2.5 hours ago, FOTM David Ryder was dropping this information on the Toronto Star website, and subscribers can soak it all in. And at some point, there'll be some further analysis.
I will say, too, that the Star has been running some sweetheart introductory subscription deals right now. I think there's a real sense that we want to earn people's readership. And we do believe at the Star, like those of us who work there, but also like the corporate mission, they believe that we are worth paying for, right? That we have a product that is worth people paying for, but we want to be able to demonstrate to people that it's worth their money. And so I think that there have been deals where for just a few dollars for your introductory rate for 6 months or something, you can get in. And of course you can cancel after that if you don't think it's worth your money, but we're hoping people will stick around and pay the subscription rate because it gives them valuable journalism to read. This is my sort of like infomercial part.
No, it's important.
But also to support the kind of journalism that they want to see. Because, and this is where, like, I don't do a lot of this lecturing about the value of journalism. But, like, you may or may not think that opinionated blowhards like me are worth supporting with your dollars, right? Like, but it is, doing that work is how I send my kids to school and put food on my table, right? But beyond that, the investigative work that Kevin Donovan does and Rob Cribb does, but also we are the only news outlet in the city that has 4 people full-time working at Toronto City Hall, right? Plus me as I spend a couple days a week there. And so we have 4 reporters there in the bureau at Toronto City Hall. We have, I believe it's 3 reporters at Queen's Park reporting on the province every single day, right? There's no other news outlet that has more than 1 reporter at Toronto City Hall, right? And many news outlets don't have a full-time reporter there anymore, right? The Globe and Mail, which is also a very good newspaper, but whose focus is no longer on Toronto City Hall, has a reporter who reports on Queen's Park and City Hall. He comes down to City Hall when there's something they want to pay attention to, but he's not sitting through the meetings. He's not working there every day. They have a cities reporter who pops into Toronto City Hall also, part-time. They have a columnist who will come and weigh in. But the Toronto Sun no longer has a bureau at City Hall at all. They gave up their office space, and Jane Stevenson or they have a columnist who will come down from Queen's Park or Ottawa. He does the jack of all trades columnist, and then they also have a reporter who reports on all things Toronto, including like live music and crime, but will also pop in when there's a big meeting going on, right? Like, but this is not to badmouth those other news outlets at all. But it's like, CBC has a radio, has a reporter down there. Like, City News has a reporter there. But like Global News has a radio reporter there every day, and he does some TV hits and radio hits, right? But that's like the Star has 4 times the manpower of any of those news organizations, and we're there every day, and we're sitting through those meetings. And we try to do the same thing with the Toronto Police Department, with the courts, and this is the stuff where these are the stories that come out that tell you about the city you live in. And you're not going to get that from the New York Times, and you're not going to get that from CNN. And no, because I subscribe to the New York Times, and I read The Athletic, and I read CNN and all of that. But really, at the end of the day, if you want the coverage of the city you live in, at a certain point, it has to be supported financially. And as we watch these broadcast outlets who have, like newspapers used to, really depend on advertising to pay their bills, what we see is them shrinking their workforce, right? Bell Media and CTV laid off 1,400, 1,500 people earlier in the year. We've just been talking about Chorus and Global shrinking their news force. And that's like ad revenue for TV news and radio news is way down in the same way that it fell off for newspapers a few years ago. And we have become more and more of a subscription model. And our print subscribers, who are older and older as a whole, but they are surprisingly loyal. They have stuck with us, and our print subscription revenue is higher than it's ever been. And our digital subscriptions are going up. But really, like, if you want local news organizations to exist, you're going to have to support them with your dollars. And we hope to earn that. But here endeth the infomercial. There are good deals right now if you're a first-time subscriber to like try and sign up and see if it's something you want to, that you're going to read every day, first of all. and that you think is worth your dollars, right? So there we go.
No, well said, Ed. You know, I support the Toronto Star. That's why I have you on every single quarter, and I meet the great David Ryder periodically just to have beers with him and his brother-in-law, who painted this very studio we're in right now. Shout out to Chris Brown, who's maybe listening to us right now as he paints a home. He does a great job. Okay, where did I actually? I was going to. Oh yeah, so another reason why we need a strong, journalistic force with the Toronto Star is we don't know what will happen. We don't have a clue what will happen should, and it looks like it's probable, but should Pierre Poilievre become prime minister with a majority, he has pledged he'll defund the CBC. So I have, some mild anxiety about what will be the repercussions of that. Like, what will that look like? What does that mean, defund the CBC? What does that mean for the CBC? But, even more reason to support the Toronto Star.
Yeah, I mean, and I also the controversially, Trudeau's government, the government of Canada under the current administration, had like a deal that gives hundreds of millions of dollars to news organizations, both TV stations and newspapers and other online news outlets. And, a lot of people have said from the beginning that puts journalists like me in a compromised position, right? Because suddenly when we're criticizing the government, that's who's paying our bills and all of that. And that may be true. That said, in addition to defunding the CBC, Poilievre is talking about cutting off all those subsidies to news organizations that are relatively new, but saying this is not how the government spends its money. And some people may think that's a good idea. Some people may think it's a bad idea. Whether it's ideologically right or wrong, it is a massive threat to the news industry that we have to figure out how we deal with. And I don't mean how we deal with it when we're covering politics. I mean how we deal with it on the business end. If that is the reality we live in, there's an existential crisis across the business, and we're trying to figure out the way forward. But, I'm glad it's not my job to figure it out that way forward.
In lighter news, I've heard back from Traders Canada viewer Leslie Taylor, who reports that the Canadian version is it's mostly normies, but there are some minor celebrities from other reality shows. And I did see, in addition to my friend Mary Jo Eustace, I'm going to screw his name up, Enoch, who was a Toronto Argonaut. He's now retired, but he won a Grey Cup with the Toronto Argonauts. So there are that kind of thing going on, but mostly normies on Traders Canada, as per Leslie Taylor.
I think they're at the stage now where, I watch all of this stuff. It gets streamed on Crave, right? But often when a show is new and it's coming out one episode at a time,
you have to wait for it to build up.
I like to wait until there's enough in the can that I don't binge watch the entire season, but we like to watch two, like a couple,
or at least every night. Like I did that with Industry. Industry is new season. I said, no, I need it to pile up so I can go bang, bang.
But it's good.
Bang,
I like the ones that are mostly normies, because I don't recognize the reality show celebrities in the first place. But I also feel like they come in with a lot of rah-rah show busy stuff. Like they're performing a certain character, and I kind of like the normies more so.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know if you have the energy for this, but there was a request that the Toronto Star, and I'm sure you're going to tell me you're actively doing this, because I can't imagine the Toronto Star wouldn't be all over this story, but they want to know if you're investigating the closure and relocation of the Ontario Science Centre, Ed Keenan.
Yeah, we have been, as an organization, looking at that, talking about it. I've written a couple of columns about it. There are reporters looking at it from different angles. And you and I have talked about it a couple times on this show. And so I don't know that I have a lot to add at this stage. I mean, my view remains that as big as the repair bill was going to be, that was a better use of dollars than leveling that and building something new there and completely building something new down at Ontario Place. It appears that falls on deaf ears. And so, deaf ears.
Yeah. Well, shout out to
that's a
Ridley
phrase-
Funeral Home. Might be some deaf ears too.
My dad is deaf, and I certainly have every respect for deaf people, and I don't mean to imply anything through the use of that phrase.
You know,
other
it's
than
one of
that-
those many
other
expressions
than
we
that you
use.
can't hear it. But I walked into the Star newsroom the other day, and we have like little boards up around, and one of them was displaying some like, hey, let's use some more sensitive language, and they specifically had that expression up there
That's wild.
saying it's unfashionable now.
It is
But what I
unfashionable
mean
now.
is that like really we can shout all we want and we are not being heard. Right?
The other day, somebody said, "Hey,
Yeah.
we should get together for a powwow," and I was thinking that's one of those things we just say because we've been living with this expression forever. We don't stop and think of like, what does that mean? What's the origin or whatever? And that's probably one of the many expressions we should probably move on from.
Right, because now we say meeting of the Council of Elders. No, I'm just
I'm gonna write that down. Okay, so here, just because I can't span it, I just don't have the energy to do it.
Yeah.
But there's the Ontario Place thing and the Science Center. These are connected.
Are we
you
going to
know.
get into the? Okay, sorry. go
Well,
ahead.
if there's something you want to get into, except that this we've talked many times about. There's an odor to all of this,
Yeah.
and I feel better knowing that good journalists are asking the right questions. And I see this, like, if you watch The Wire and Lester has like the board and he's connecting how all these
Right, the little piece of
Marlowe's
red
people are
string
connected, or
tying them all together.
Avon's connected to string, and here's these guys. Or
There
whatever.
are these characters who keep popping up, particularly certain development groups who have pieces of land near so many of these different projects and whatnot.
And that highway, is it the
I
413?
assure you that there are better reporters than me, but that I know and work with, who are every day like constantly looking closely at that stuff and talking
Yeah.
to a lot of people and digging up documents. And if there's some kind of smoking gun there that would merit an accusation beyond pointing out the existence of these coincidences,
Right, the odor.
it will be reported. Like I'm
Promise?
like,
Okay.
but I haven't encountered anything like that. And I have
And you've looked
a
at the
theory, and I've
wedding
said this-
registry,
I've
the
s-
guest
I've said
list.
this about Doug Ford a few times, and maybe I'm being too kind to him for some people's taste, or maybe this is a damning thing to say. But I think, he used to call at Toronto City Hall, he used to say, like, when something just looked a little sideways, like a no-tender contract for a certain vendor to get a long-term lease on restaurant space at a public park at the beaches, he and his brother called that corruption outright. And they didn't care if there's some quid pro quo. They don't care if there's actually some backroom deal. What they're saying is, like, the fact that this looks
Optics.
bad is corrupt. And most of us don't use the English language that way, but Doug Ford used to. And I think the C word that applies probably more conventionally to a lot of the things that he announces is not corruption, although it may in some sense, or in his old-fashioned sense, they might have a bit of that in it. But I think like cronyism, like I think he legitimately thinks stuff that's good for these developers is good, period, right? That open for business means we are for business, right? Like we exist to serve business, right? And so these developers and moneyed corporate interests that he schmoozes with at given parties or whatever, or invites into meetings. Remember, you will probably remember, some of your listeners might remember, when Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto and Doug Ford was like kind of the sidekick brother, Doug went on, had a big press conference to announce, like, hey, this generations-long Portlands redevelopment scheme that the city, the province, the federal government have all been working on together. We are throwing that out. And we are going to have a Ferris wheel, and we are going to have hotels where you can boat right up and you can dock. And he's announcing this kind of like monorails. And he said outright, I invited some of the biggest developers in the world to come into a meeting, and this is the ideas they came up with.
Right.
This is unimpeachable because you know who gave it to me? Developers did. Developers came up with this plan. That's the kind of plan we need, right? I'm not quoting him directly, but that was honestly the gist of what he said. He was not trying to hide we came up with this independently and it's going to be coincidentally good for developers. It was like he was saying, I took dictation when the developers who want to build these tourist attractions told me what they'd like to build, and now I'm showing it to you, right? And I think a lot of his mindset and a lot of these decisions of like, oh yeah, these developers are getting rich because they own land beside right where he said he's going to open up development is like, no doubt when he hears from certain lobbyists, certain development interests, like we need to open up development here, he thinks, oh yeah, if that's good for their business, it's probably good for Ontario. And that's why he does it. And so I honestly think a lot of those connections are just old-fashioned cronyism where the people he thinks he's serving, but he thinks that's his job, right? Like, it's not. Now, maybe there's more to it than that. And if there is, I assure you, it will be dug up eventually, right? But this has been happening for long enough in two different levels of government and stuff where you see these coincidences, and it turns out more often than not, it's just like, it's not like an envelope full of dollars. It's more like a thumbs up and like, I'm looking out for my friends because I believe that's my job.
Wow. Okay, listen.
That's a theory.
That's a theory. You also made the second monorail episode of The Simpsons reference in this conversation. So are you okay for 20 more minutes? This is where I check in on you and your small bladder.
Yeah,
so 20 more minutes?
Yeah, I'm good. Unless if you need to do some plugs, I can always pop into the restroom.
I'll do a plug.
But
okay, I'll address the peoples. Go do that right now, Mr. Keenan, because we're going to do rapid fire for this last 20 minutes. There's a few points I want to hit. But I want to let everybody listening know about recyclemyelectronics.ca. Write that down. Recyclemyelectronics.ca. Because if you have old phones, maybe it's an old typewriter, don't throw out the old typewriter. Send it to Tom Hanks. I think he collects those things. But if you have old electronics or cables, we all have cables we'll never use. Technology has moved on, but we're still attached to these old cables. Don't go nuts with your spring cleaning or fall cleaning and throw all this in the garbage because those chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, and then you'll find out where you can drop off these cables and devices so that the chemicals don't end up in our landfill. So thank you to recyclemyelectronics.ca. Once again, welcome back, Minaris. We already discussed, yes, we are open. Season 7 is dropping. Now, Ed Keenan, we're going to go 20 minutes kind of rapid fire on a few different things here. A couple of questions I ask every single episode, but do you have any insight into... is on this rapid fire list the tunnel under the 401? Okay. Yeah, tunnel under 401.
I figured we were going to have to get to that. Yeah,
it's coming. But I was going to ask you, I was... sad to hear that Michael Ford had to take a leave of absence, and there's no further details at this time. But we were just talking about his uncle, Doug, and his other uncle, Rob. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, has been brought up a few times in this episode. But Michael Ford is an MPP, and he's taking a leave.
Yeah, and I hope he's all right.
Yeah, so we don't know anything further except that he needs some time.
I don't have any further details about that, but I hope that his health is good. I hope that he turns out well. Wish him nothing but the best. And I think, at Toronto City Council, he was in the process of sort of carving out his own identity. He obviously was elected to a large part on the strength of his family name and the legacy of his uncles. But he was developing his own sort of sense of himself as a political figure, and then he sort of got swept up into his uncle's caucus there, but in as much as he needs some time to deal with something, I think well, it's like I'm not a politician who has to extend like best wishes and all of that in the circumstances, but it is like he's a human being, and I hope he's well. And I have never viewed him as a particular villain of a politician in the first place. I think he's often on the wrong side of things with members of his family from what I consider the right and wrong sides. But he also seems like a decent guy. And so I hope he's okay.
What can you share with us, your thoughts on this tunnel that Doug Ford wants to build under the 401?
These guys, Doug Ford has a thing for tunnels, right? Like when they were at City Hall, they just want to put everything underground, right? It's got to they were willing to spend inordinate amounts of money to put things underground. And you'll remember Doug Ford in particular, too, when he was there, he was talking about the Gardner, and people were talking about tolling the Gardner, and he was like, maybe we should build a second deck on it, and that could be the express toll deck, but maybe also a tunnel under the Gardner like Boston's Big Dig. So he was already talking about that. And like there's this fascination that they have with putting things underground. And the logistics of it are just so mind-boggling. So I did some, like, first of all, I'm trying to figure out where to start here. But let me start with this.
Sure.
I looked at Boston's Big Dig. So if people don't know, Boston had like a big downtown express lane like the Gardner. And at tremendous expense over the course of 15 or 20 years, they buried it. They put it all in a tunnel. And that opened up all kinds of redevelopment on the main way. But also, so I looked at the per kilometer cost of that project. Now, that started in the 1990s. And so there's been significant, not just inflation, but infrastructure cost inflation. Like, let's remember in the 1990s, the TTC built the Shepherd subway line, and the entire line was considered to be grossly extravagantly expensive because it was $1 billion, right?
Right.
$1 billion barely gets you a single station today, right? So that's it's not just regular inflation. It's not even Toronto housing market inflation. It's like steroidal infrastructure inflation has happened since then. But forget that, right? If you take the per kilometer cost of Boston's Big Dig and you take a stretch of the 401 from Brampton to Scarborough and use that cost, convert it to Canadian dollars, and then just apply the cost of living index inflation, not, like I said, steroidal infrastructure inflation, we're looking at a ballpark like minimum $150 billion. Then you look at the amount of time it takes to build the Eglinton Crosstown subway, for example.
Right.
Or look at Boston's Big Dig and the amount of time it took them to do 7 miles of road there. And you see like, what are we talking about? 30 or 40 years. And then look at the Ontario line. Look at the Eglinton Crosstown. Look what has happened to traffic on the surface while you're working on a tunnel. So if we're doing 30 years of tunneling under the 401, what does that mean for the surface traffic on the 401? Like, while we have to have staging grounds and shut down the express lanes or whatever in order to excavate, like, okay, and so this is never happening, right? But in the meantime, the friggin' 407 is right there, right? It's right there, and it would be full if we hadn't sold it to a private tolling company who, first of all, like, charges like outrageous rates. Like, and they're obviously setting the rates at a way to make sure there's never any traffic on it. If you travel much in the United States, and I have a American Easy Pass transponder that I still keep paying to top up because I travel enough into the United States that it's worth my while. But you'll see that in most of the Northeast, at least, and much of the states that I've driven through, there are often posted rates, and they change at different times of the day, or they change depending on the traffic. But you'll be on the freeway, and there'll be 2 lanes in the middle that are separated off, like the express lanes of the 401 say, and those are toll lanes. And there'll be a little sign here that tells you, like, if you want to drive on this right now, it's 75 cents, or it's $1.75, or like I'll go on the 95 Turnpike down to New York City, and the entire trip there, when I get my bill, will have wound up costing me like $6.50 to go like 300 kilometers, right? So like, these are tolls that generate revenue and actually give people a decision to make, but they're also like, it's not like taking an Uber.
Right.
It's like, would you pay $1 to skip a little bit of this traffic? Would you pay $2? Would you pay whatever, right? Not like every time I get a bill from the 407 because I break down and take it. Now, I don't have a 407 transponder, but but it's like $35 or something. And I'm like, how was that worth it for, I saved 10 minutes for $35? What the hell, right? Or $18.50 for like one interchange, right? And it's like, now I'm paying a premium because they mail me the bill, but the point being that, like, even if you wanted to operate a toll road, you could operate in a way that would attract a lot more traffic. In the United States, if you live in Maryland, for instance, I know from personal experience, the government of Maryland will send everybody who lives there a free transponder. And you automatically get an account with them, and you can set it so your credit card tops it up with $30 or whatever. You can set it however you want, so
like
that you've
got a little
or
whatever.
Yeah, like a Presto card. But those are free for everybody.
Right.
That means it's easy for you to use their roads. It's not like getting initiated into a club where you have to figure out where to get it and you have to pay for the installation of it and all of that to begin with. It's like they make it easy. And so the 407's right there.
Right.
They could buy it back. And I know there are provisions in the contract. Maybe it would be very expensive. It cannot possibly be more expensive than tunneling under the 401. But maybe it would be very expensive. But I also know the provincial government has powers. They are expropriating land from people who have run businesses for a generation near Pape and Danforth so that they can build the Ontario line. They have the power to seize that land, right? If they want the 407, they can take it, right? And yes, it would cost money, but it can't possibly cost more than what it already costs. Like, if you had the 407 available, it would become another viable route. You could then, if you wanted to, with or without the 407, you could put tolls on the express lanes of the 401. You could set the tolls in a way that they make real good sense for all those trucks and not sense for other people, right? You could do a whole lot of different things, but this is just like an absurd idea. Like, who wants now? This is all without even getting into the fact, and there are some people who will never believe this, but people who study highways all over the world, and the 401 has gone from 4 lanes to 18 lanes at some places. It's 16 for most of it, but that often expands out to 18 when the on-ramps come on and all of that. The widest highway by lanes in all of North America. And it's still, guess what? Grinding traffic, right?
Right.
And this happens no matter where you go in the world, is that when you add more highway lanes, within a year or two, within a certain period of time, traffic reaches the same level it was at before. It's called induced demand, right? Because people will keep moving. If you build an entirely new highway that made it possible for you to get downtown to Toronto from London, Ontario in 35 minutes, enough people would move there that within a year or two, that highway would be full and it would take 3 hours, right?
Well, Yogi Berra would say, nobody goes there anymore. It's too busy.
That's right. That's right. And so this is like, there's a University of Toronto professor who wrote one of a very influential paper, and he called this the fundamental law of traffic congestion. And that is, any new lane of traffic that you build or any capacity that you open up on a highway will almost immediately be filled so that traffic reaches the same level it was at before. And it's just what happens, right? You get an immediate relief, right? So if we open up the 407, we would have a year or so where both the 407 and the 401 would be noticeably less congested, or the 401 at least would be noticeably less congested, and it would be easy to drive. But as soon as the commute from Hamilton took 1 hour during rush hour instead of 2.5, people who currently take the GO train from Hamilton would start driving again, right? People would move to the other side of Hamilton and say, now we can commute from Niagara Falls to Toronto because it's only a 2-hour drive. And so that highway would fill up again, I'd say within a year, within 2 years. And so you're going to spend however much you're going to spend, and you're going to benefit from it for maybe 1 to 2 years, maybe 3.
and Ed Keenan, what it incentivizes people to do is get back into their cars when we really should be focused on getting people out of their cars.
Yeah. And whenever people hear that, they think like, oh, they think me driving my car is evil. And okay, there are climate reasons why you would like people to drive their cars less or to use less carbon intensive. And there are city building reasons, I think, why you'd like the roads to be less clogged up with personal vehicles, right? But it's also just the fact of life is that you cannot really make traffic in the city move much faster, right? You can clear up bottlenecks and make it move smoother. But since the 1910s, since the invention of the automobile, I wrote a column that cited this, like, over the years of research, where, like, if you look at, like, one of the first things about traffic in cities was that in downtown London, England, in the 1940s, like, the standard rate at which traffic would actually move was like 8 miles per hour, the average rate. And then you look at the U.S. government in Manhattan, say, was doing a lot of studies through the 1950s and 60s because they were trying to build expressways and try to change it. And the rate traffic moved, the average speed was, again, like in that 8 mile per hour range. And in Toronto right now, the average speed to traffic moves is like 8 miles per hour, right? If you translate it to whatever kilometers or back and forth, right? It's like cities, the roads fill up to move at about this speed, right? So you can fit more cars on, all going at that same speed by making the roads wider. Or you can, do other things. But really, if I want to move faster, I need a subway line that takes me directly to where I want to go. Or I need a bike lane that allows me to skip. I can go faster than 8 miles per hour in the bike lane beside the traffic, right? Or I need to be able to live closer to where I work so I can walk, and I may or may not, I'm not going to move faster than 8 miles per hour unless I'm really putting on my sprint.
Donovan Bailey.
But what I am going to do is, like, enjoy my 10-minute commute, to wherever I'm going, right? It's like there have to be more ways for people to get around, and we're just not going to be able to move cars much faster than we do right now, right? Like, we're just not. It doesn't matter what you do. And because the other part of the fundamental law of traffic congestion, and a lot of people we would consider urban progressives would want to sweep this under the rug a little bit. Certainly somebody like Doug Ford, who's spending $30 billion on public transit, is going to want to sweep this under the rug. Is like, transit actually doesn't help it doesn't clear up traffic congestion at all. Because as soon as more people take transit, some other people will start driving in the place they used to go, right? So it's like, if people from Scarborough could suddenly get downtown, or let's say they live in Scarborough and they work in North York, where there's currently no good way to get there by public transit, right? They're driving right now. If they had a subway line that takes them right to their office, they stop driving. But suddenly somebody who lives in Pickering and works in Mississauga, somebody who works in Mississauga buys a house in Pickering because they can now drive, right? Like, if space opens up on the road, no matter what reason it opens up for, it will fill up with other cars. So, but what you can do by building more mass transit is make more people able to get where they're going faster than they otherwise would. And so the goal of building bike lanes is not to ease congestion. The goal of building new subway lines is not to ease congestion. It's to allow more and more people to avoid congestion altogether by having a better, faster, more convenient, easier, less stressful way to get where they're going, even though we know more car drivers are going to pile right into the open space but
of course, as Doug and others know, generally speaking, people are kind of dumb, so they're not going to take this into consideration. But I do want to read a headline from you, and again, that I realize the tunnel question should not have been in the rapid fire.
I'm not very good at this rapid fire, am I?
Well, it's okay. We're almost done here. You've been amazing. I look forward to your visit every quarter, and I promise everybody, I think it'll be early January. We have a recurring meeting. You were only late for it once. That was last time when you were a month late.
We had to punt it a couple times. Yeah.
But you're back on schedule. Love to see it. You wrote, someone should tell Doug Ford this isn't 2012 and he isn't mayor of Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, that's related to the tunnel thing, but it is really like...
But also, if I may just to piggyback on that quick, because I don't have time for another 20 minutes on that fucking tunnel, but the Doug Ford came out and, you know I'm a cyclist, so I'm a lot of bias I bring to this table. I have a quote from FOTM Tony Napo, who's an actor. I quite like him as a person, but he put something on his Instagram that boiled my potatoes. But back to this Doug Ford thinking he's mayor. This whole no bike lanes that take a lane of like vehicular traffic away. So if a lane of vehicular traffic is being sacrificed for a bike lane, that's against some provincial, like he wants to make that against the provincial law.
He wants to make it against the law, yeah.
That also boils my potatoes because to me, leave the bike lanes to Toronto. Like I don't understand the interference from the premier when it comes to something as municipal as bike lanes.
Yeah. I mean, and I just think like one of the first things he did when he was made premier was like shrink the size of Toronto City Council. Then he was like rewriting the powers and descriptions of the mayor's office. He kept talking about how the downtown NDP pinkos were not going to like derail his government. Like there is a real sense where like, and this is, if bike lanes are not an area of municipal jurisdiction, then I don't know what the heck is.
I know.
Right? Like, it's really like, it doesn't get more...
Like, next he'll be telling you, like, oh, the garbage...
Yeah, I mean, and they already have overridden city zoning laws and powers. They've already rewritten the development charges for cities. It's like, it seems like the job he really wanted was mayor of Toronto. And, of course, he did run for that. And he lost.
He did lose. But John Tory won that.
The best revenge is like, if you don't get the job you want, if you can become the boss of the job you wanted, that's maybe even...
So I do know how I want to close.
But then if I lived in one of those other cities in Ontario that you mentioned earlier, like that
Sudbury?
you recently became aware of, Sudbury, where like...
Did you know there's a
Give your
Sudbury?
balls a tug, eh? I know. I watch a show about a hockey team that plays in Sudbury, eh?
Shorzy.
And Gananoque and North Bay and Thunder Bay and Sioux Lookout. If I lived in one of those places where there's like a crisis in those rural hospitals, right? Where there's like they have no family doctors, where they have no community medicine at all. I might be wondering why the premier is busy being mayor of Toronto when he could be actually dealing with areas of municipal or provincial jurisdiction that affect my daily life, right? So, I don't know, but the people of Toronto are not the people who voted for.
I find it infuriating. So. But okay, so I'm going to read again. I'm going to call this the ill-advised post of the week. This is FOTM Tony Napo on his public Instagram page. So not a personal text or anything like that, but I'm just going to read it, and we're not even going to comment on it. So I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to ask you, because you were covering Donald Trump when he was president of the United States of America, and you were based close to Washington, D.C. to cover American politics. I'm going to ask you just before we say goodbye, because next time you visit, the election will be in the rearview mirror. When I say election, I mean the American election for president. So I'm going to ask you for your thoughts before I play us out, but I just want to read the Tony Napo Instagram post that boiled my potatoes. If the government lost one vote for removing all bicycle lanes, he put all bicycle lanes, from every person I have ever seen on a bicycle in a bicycle lane in my entire life, I don't think that would amount to 500 lost votes. Hashtag major fail, hashtag city planning or pandering. So FOTM Tony Napo, who I believe is in the new Stu Stone movie, and I will be seeing Tony and that movie on the 10th of October. That's next week, and I'll be at the premiere, which I think is the Young Dundas Theater there. I'm gonna give him a shot. Like, I'm just gonna punch him in the stomach when I see Tony, because that might be. I think that is the most ignorant post I've seen in a long time.
Shorzium, yeah.
I'm going to give it to him, so we don't have to comment any further, because I just want you to give me your take on the U.S. election, since we won't talk again on the microphones anyways before the election, which I believe is November 5th.
Things look somewhat more hopeful since Kamala Harris was nominated, for people who think that Donald Trump returning to office would be a disaster. I certainly am among those people. I really think it's hard to overstate, and I think watching Donald Trump through this campaign is like he's unraveling, right? He looks more and more loony all the time, and I think Kamala Harris and Tim Walz look like they are righted the ship. It's still, there's no slam dunk. It's like a toss-up election right now. It could be close. It could go either way. And I think, like, I'll be biting my nails here watching it like everybody else. And
a lot of mail-in ballots. Like we learned this from last time that some states take some time to count these mail-in ballots, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as we learned, you don't go to bed anymore. Like it's like in the old days.
Not just mail-in ballots. It's like early vote ballots too, because in some states, they count all those as they come in, but it's like under seal. But on election night, they immediately add those to the tally, like they get released right away,
right?
And so those are the first votes you see. But in some states, like Pennsylvania, and this is what we had last time, they're not allowed to start counting all those early ballots.
Until
some
the
mailed
polls
in,
close?
some passed in person,
Right.
until the polls close,
Right.
which means that they've got warehouses full of these that have been cast weeks and weeks ahead of time. They could have been counting them all ahead of time, but there's a law that says they can't start counting them until the polls close. And so they start on election night. But now that more and more people vote early or vote by mail, there's more and more of those votes. And so that's what we saw last time. Is that sometimes it takes days and days for all the votes to be counted. And it's not even all that surprising that the people who voted early maybe voted for somebody different than the people who all rushed out and voted on election day. It's just the way it works.
History has taught us most of those mail-in ballots and early ballots that we're referring to now typically go to the Democratic Party. Like it seems like the Republican Party have sort of like somehow they've
Donald Trump in particular. Now, if you look at Florida, like last time when Donald Trump was trying to vilify it in advance and he was like really trying to discourage, like he's saying, oh, it's a big scam. In Florida, traditionally, all these retirees, all these like bread and butter Republicans have always voted early, and they often have voted by mail. Donald Trump himself voted by mail in Florida.
That's fantastic.
And so the Republican Party there was like, what are you doing? Don't vilify the mail-in vote. That's our vote, right? Foreign service members, like members of the military, who traditionally are Republicans, always vote by mail, right? And so it's like, but in the contentious places like Arizona and Pennsylvania and whatnot, the people who were afraid to vote in person last time because of the pandemic were mostly Democrats, right? Like, so, but yeah, things are going to be crazy in that election. And again, I fear, like, unless it's some kind of slam dunk, there could be more and more days and weeks of like, who won?
It's like layer and layer of anxiety living in this world in 2024. Have you noticed that? Like, it makes me just want to, let me just dive into my Great Lakes beer and unplug.
All right.
Is that a good idea?
It's almost time to do that. I think that's the sound.
This is no answer to this question. I don't know if you have one or not, but you talked about these warehouses full of mail-in ballots that sit in Pennsylvania waiting for the polls to close on November 5th so that the good people can count them, right? Like, what happens if there's a natural disaster or a fire? Like, and if let's say you have all these mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state, and something happens and they're gone. Like, what happens?
I think that was the plot of The Boys.
I wrote that right now.
It was a subplot on The Boys, the TV show, where like there was an attack on the polling station or the ballot counting station. So
like
if
you're
because
like
it's
the Joker
absolutely
and
like
you just want to watch the world burn and you like chaos.
Terrorist move. Yeah, it's like, but also like, you can choose which counties you're targeting and say, oh, that's the place where all the Democrats live, or that's the place where all the Republicans live. And in a close election, this could make a big difference, right?
Wow. Listen, keep doing what you're doing. We need you at the Toronto Star, and I am your biggest fan. I just want you to know that. I know Leslie Taylor said that you're her favorite. You're actually my favorite.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me here every 3 months, obviously.
See you in 3 months. And that brings us to the end of our 1,557th show. Let me know if the Toronto Star podcast division needs a bright young consultant to come in and shake things up over there. TMDS will be riding their bike to the well, and we'll sort things out for you.
Yeah, you can use this as a demo reel.
Oh no, I didn't even record this. You can follow me on social media. Go to torontomike.com. I noticed on Twitter the Keenan Wire is rarely used anymore because Elon Musk
but
is
the
an
account
asshole.
is still there. So,
Right.
but yeah,
Do you update anything?
there's no social media I'm
No,
really using.
It's okay.
Yeah,
Just
that's
subscribe
public
to the
anymore.
Star, and
yeah.
you can read all of its private thoughts in the Toronto Star. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. Don't forget your beer, Mr. Keenan. Palma Pasta, your lasagna's in the freezer. I'll go get it. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Raymond James Canada. Welcome back Maneris. And Ridley Funeral Home. Seawall. I got to go to my count. Oh, I think it's Leona Boyd if I did that off the top of my head. I'm working on something special that's related to the 1987 Blue Jays, but if it's not ready in time, the next episode of Toronto Mike will be Leona Boyd. Woo! Monday at 2 p.m. See you all then.